Just 4 words built this entire app. Get, post, put, and delete power all the apps that millions of people use daily. When I first started learning these methods, I thought I'd never get it. It felt like it was something for only the real devs. But then something just clicked. The method post gives data to the server for it to store away so you can get it later. The method get is literally just that, to get data. Your computer sends a request to a server, and that server will respond with data that you can use in your React app. The method put updates data you've already given to the server. For example, if you need to update your social media post. The delete method is just that, deleting data that you've already given to a server. All these methods are just different commands you give the API so it knows how to handle your request and data. Before we jump into building this social media app, we have to get all of our tools ready. The first thing you're going to do is clone this Git repo that I have in the description. And if you don't know how to do that, that's okay, because I have a whole video on that. The next thing you're going to need to do is sign up for Mock API. Once you've already created a project, go ahead and create a new resource. In this resource, go ahead and get rid of all of these fields. Then you're going to add 3 more fields. You're going to need a username, and its data type will be a string. Then you need this content with the data type of string. Then you're going to need this created app with the data type of date. Go ahead and name your resource posts. Once you have all this filled out, go ahead and click this create button, and you have your resource. Now you're going to want to copy this API endpoint for your code. Now in this script, go ahead and change this API URL to be whatever endpoint you just copied, and change this last part to be whatever you named that resource. So in my case, I named it posts. Now in this script, there are a couple things to know about. There's this handle submit function, which is asynchronous, and we're going to work on him in just a little bit. And then there's this form. In this form, you have an input. This input is used for the username, and this text area for the content. And anytime you type in either one of these, you'll see those updates in real time. Now right now, our form doesn't really do anything, so let's change that. Now this handle submit function is going to take one property. It's going to be this E, or the event. And because we're passing this handle submit on this onSubmit handler, every time you click this post button to submit this form, it'll reload the entire page. Now we don't want that right now. Otherwise, our changes won't be reflected. So what you're going to do is prevent that behavior with e.prevent default. Then we're going to use this fetch function to send a post request to our API URL. Now when sending a post request with fetch, you need 4 things. You need the API URL, you need to specify the method, which would be post, but you also need to include what's called a header. And these headers are like instructions for the server to tell what format you're sending this data in. Without that header, the server won't know how to read your data and it'll be ignored. And then you need the body of the post, and that contains the actual data. Now every time you use fetch, you have to put this await keyword in front of it, because fetch returns as a promise. Now every time you hit this post button, it's going to call this handle submit function. It's going to prevent the page from reloading, and then it's going to send this API request to put data into that mock API. Now to make this look just a little nicer, we're going to set this content string back to being empty, as well as setting the username back to being empty. Now once you've saved all those changes, go ahead and make your first post. Now you're not going to see that post displayed yet. Now go to your mock API and click this data button, and you'll see the data that you just created using that post method. Now it's pretty cool that we can post data, but what if we could get that data back? To do that, go ahead and move to the post list script. In here, you'll see this asynchronous function, fetch posts. This function will be in charge of getting all our posts from our server. And just like before, we're going to use that fetch function, except this time we're going to store it in a response variable. And make sure you put in that API URL. Now we don't need to specify the method because get is already implied, and we don't need the headers or the body because we're not posting any data. You're going to create one more variable called data. and we're going to extract that JSON data from this response variable. Now response.json returns a promise, which is why you have to await it. Next, you have to update this setPostState with that new data. Finally, we're going to use a use effect so that every time we reload our page, we're going to call this fetchPost function. Now this is very important. Make sure you add these brackets at the very end. Otherwise, you're going to reach the limit on how many times you can call this API. I forgot to do that while I was recording and I reached my rate limit. Now go ahead and save your code and you'll see those changes reflected in your React app. Now the code and design for this card is in this post item script. Now all this data that's being returned is being returned as a list of objects. We're looping through all of these posts, so for every post we're creating a post item. So as it goes through this first iteration, it creates a post item, passing in a key and a post as its prop. Now in this post item script, we're going to create a content state, so we can update that content later. We're also going to display the username and the content. Now we're going to stay in this component because this is where all the updating happens. Now when you click this pencil, this modal pops up, and this is how you're going to edit a post. Now I have a challenge for you. In the description, there's a GitHub repo with 3 projects, a recipe app, a to-do list, and a journaling app. And once you're done, share your GitHub repo so I can feature it. But make sure you follow all the instructions. And that happens with this isModalOpen state. It's set to false by default. So when you click that pencil button, it triggers this open modal function and sets it to true. Now once it's set to true, because of conditional rendering, as soon as it's set to true, all of this code becomes visible. Now in this modal, there's this text area, and that's where that content is gonna live so you can update it. Now we automatically populate this text area with the content of the post that we just clicked. Now to create this editing feature, find this handle update function. To update that data, we're going to need to make another API call, and it's very similar to the post method. So you can copy all that code and paste it right here. Now because we're only updating content, you can remove this username field and this created at field. Now when updating data, how does the server know which post to update? Go back to your mock API and click the data button, and you'll notice this ID field. This ID field is unique. No other post will have an ID of 1. So the way to update your data is to tell the server, I want to update the post with an ID of 1. Now the way you do that in your code is by changing this URL slightly. Now you're going to add one more thing, slash, and then the post ID. So from this post prop, we're going to include the post ID. And you also have to change this method from post to put. Now we're almost done. Go to the post list script and pass that fetch posts as a prop. Now in post item, go ahead and accept that prop and use it down here in this handle update. And finally, to make things look a little nicer, we're going to close that modal out every time we hit the save button. Now back in our React app, we can change this from first post to edited post. Hit that save button, reload the page, and see those changes. And the very last thing we need to do is create this delete function, and that's going to live in this post list script. Now it's very similar to the put method, so you can copy all that code and paste it in here. All you need to do is remove this post.id and change it to just ID. You can also change this method to delete and remove everything else. You're going to take that delete post function and pass that as a prop into post item. In post item, go ahead and accept that prop. Now scroll down and find this delete icon. In here, you're going to add an on-click handler, and in that, you're going to create an arrow function and pass in this delete post prop, as well as the post ID. Once you save that, you can go to your React app and click this delete icon, and you'll see it's gone. You can reload the page, and it's no longer there. And those are the 4 methods that you need to power any app. Make sure you finish one of those challenges, and after that, go and build something great.